Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to the channel. So let's start with today's analysis, which is going to be for 26th of May 2023. So firstly, here we have this article which is talking about the insurance policy. So all-in-one policy plan to spread insurance in India. So when we talk about the level of insurance penetration, that is really low. So IRDA, which is the regulator of the insurance sector, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, it is devising an affordable product covering health, life, property, accident risk to give citizens protection and expedite their claim settlements by linking the death registries onto one industry platform. So basically चीजों को थोड़ा और simple बनाने की कोशिश की जा रही है and insurance penetration के लिए भी in terms of health education sector, not education, health, life, property. So major focus areas ये हैं जहाँ पे focus किया जा रहा है कि यहाँ पे insurance जो policies है they are basically bought by the people and आपका जो क्लेम सेटलमेंट का प्रोसेस है उसको भी थोड़ा और इजी बनाने की कोशिश की जा रही है थ्रू दिस पॉलिसी. So Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority is driving multi-pronged changes to expand citizens' safety nets. So यहाँ पे different features हैं, different areas है जिस पे focus किया जा रहा है. So a new bundled insurance product, बीमा विस्तार to provide आपको मतलब लाइफ हेल्थ एक्सीडेंट प्रॉपर्टी कवर प्रोवाइड किया जाएगा थ्रू अ सिंगल सिंपल पॉलिसी. सो एक ही पॉलिसी के अंडर आपको ये सारे एरियाज कवर्ड मिलेंगे. देन बीमा सुगम प्लेटफॉर्म एक होगा, सिंगल प्लेटफॉर्म जो बनाया जा रहा है. This would be one-stop shop for the customers, integrating the insurers also and distributors also. So बीमा सुगम प्लेटफॉर्म पे आपको सारी डिफरेंट टाइप्स की पॉलिसीज जो इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसीज होंगी वो सारी आपको यहाँ पे available की जाएंगी and accordingly you can go for them. Then linking of the digital death registries to platforms so claims they can be settled within hours or a day. So इस तरीके से basically जो डेथ रजिस्ट्रीज है उनको इस प्लेटफॉर्म से लिंक किया जाएगा एंड बेसिकली इट वुड बी इमीडिएटली अपडेटेड सो दैट आपके जो क्लेम सेटलमेंट प्रोसेस है उसमें मतलब बहुत ज्यादा टाइम ना लगे, घंटों में या कुछ ही दिनों में यू कैन गेट योर क्लेम सेटल्ड. Then permitting the insurers to sell value-added services with the policies. For example, आपको yoga class would be bundled with a health scheme. Like अगर आप health insurance की कोई policy खरीद रहे हो, तो yoga classes would be available to you. So these are some basically value-added services जो आपको available की जाएंगी through the insurance policies. Then women to lead the campaign to spur the insurance penetration each gram sabha. मतलब माइक्रो लेवल पे, लोकल लेवल पे कोशिश की जा रही है कि इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी ज्यादा लोग खरीदे. And roping in the states to form insurance committees to expand the coverage across the districts. So move will also allow the smaller micro and regional insurers to reach different strata of society. So basically और micro level पे जाने की बात की जा रही है and हमने बाकी जो important features थे वो देख लिया. So China is constructing model villages opposite the line of actual control. So frequency of patrolling वो है जो increase हो गई है, that has gone up significantly. New posts they are coming up as per the sources. So still यहाँ पे जब हम बात करते हैं the border dispute between India and China, so we are not seeing any such settlement that is being done so far. So in this picture, you can see it's a Trimbakeshwar temple, which was built by Peshwa Balaji Bajirao. So temple architecture and different different temples coming from which all dynasties, specifically South India में ये from the perspective of medieval history हमें जानना important है. So you can just know about the location and again किस dynasty ने किस kingdom ने उसको construct किया, temple architecture, how is it different? So all of that becomes important for us. Coming to the editorial page, so यहाँ पे भी again ordinance के बारे में बात की जा रही है. Ordinance, उसकी constitutionality and scrutiny about जो पूरा episode हुआ and basically ये हम मतलब बहुत बार डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, इसको पूरा डिटेल में भी ले चुके हैं. बट यहाँ पे अगेन इट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट आर्टिकल 123 है जो बात करता है रिगार्डिंग दी ऑर्डिनेंस इशूइंग पावर ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट. आर्टिकल 137 इज टू द गवर्नर ऑफ अ स्टेट. एंड बाकी यहाँ पे एक जजमेंट मेंशन की गई है. इसके अलावा यहाँ पे दिल्ली का जो इशू चल रहा था कि ब्यूरोक्रेसी का कंट्रोल ज्यादा दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट के पास है, विच इज लाइक लेड बाय द चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ दिल्ली. की जो यूनियन गवर्नमेंट है बेसिकली एलजी वर्सेस द चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ दिल्ली, ये इशू चल रहा था. तो जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट आई, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये बोला बेसिकली दैट जजमेंट वाज इन फेवर ऑफ द दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट, द दिल्ली काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स लेड बाय द चीफ मिनिस्टर. सो उस जजमेंट को ओवरकम करने के लिए, उसको सरपास करने के लिए सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने एक ऑर्डिनेंस इशू किया है, सो दैट जो पावर्स हैं वो एलजी के हैंड्स में कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड रहे. सो बेसिकली इसीलिए ये टॉपिक न्यूज में भी है. एंड एज आई सेड यू कि we have covered all the important details before, so you can just go through this article once if you have missed that particular video. So economics that looks at the lower half of the pyramid. So it's the economy stupid. Bill Clinton said in 1990s, while politicians and political analysts, they are focused on communal polarization and caste cleavages, a deeper divide amongst the classes is silently reconfiguring the Indian electorate. So the numbers of Indians which are left behind by the growth of the economy, they now exceed 50%, when reservations in the employment for economically weaker sections for Indian citizens, regardless of the caste and religion, now that is necessary. उसके बाद भी we are seeing कि 50% of population को ऐसा कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा है with the economic growth which is happening in India. So in a way we are talking about the economic inequality and the growing divide between classes. So the theme at the Global Solutions Summit, which was held on 15 to 16 May this year, was a new paradigm for the economy. Its backdrop was the rising tensions in the East between the United States and China, and the war in the West between NATO and Russia. So under that backdrop, we held this Global Solutions Summit. So military wars, they are being couched as wars between democracy and autocracy. This is one thing. G7 की बात करें, which represents 15% of the world citizens who are ostensibly on the side of democracy, they are autocratically and undemocratically twisting the arms of other governments. And think tanks of the G20 and other countries at the summit, they called attention to the global problems of climate change, increasing economic inequalities within and among the countries, effects of financial and trade sanctions, which were imposed by the most powerful nation, which are affecting other 85% most of all. So these are some of the global challenges also. ये भी आपको पता होना चाहिए. And obviously आपको सारे areas में, not just from the perspective of environment like climate क्या बात कर लोगे, इकोनॉमी की सेंस में, देन हाउ जियोपॉलिटिकली थिंग्स आर चेंजिंग, एंड जो वॉर चल रहा है उसकी वजह से इकोनॉमिकली हाउ थिंग्स हैव चेंज, एंड व्हाट आर द न्यू चैलेंजेस दैट हैव इमर्ज्ड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट वॉर. सो ऑल ऑफ दैट it comes under the global challenges. So what are the changes, political and economic, both दोनों की बात की जा रही है. So focused must be on universal social and ecological well-being. Indian political parties and economies, they need to refocus on the economy. So politics की भी बात करें तो again you can't just be involved in only in politics, and आपको definitely economy पे focus करना बहुत important है. There is a linkage between अगर good economy में, मतलब economy it would be recording a good amount of growth, economic challenges like अगर inflation कम रहेगी तो obviously उसके political फायदे भी हैं to the incumbent government. So that's why it's important for the political parties to also focus upon the economy. सो सब्सिडीज के बारे में बात होती है, क्या वो अच्छी हैं या आर दी सब्सिडीज बैड, क्या इंसेंटिव्स अच्छे हैं या नहीं. सो द न्यू कंसेप्ट ऑफ रिफॉर्म्स फॉलोइंग द रीगन्स डिक्टम दैट द गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट द सॉल्यूशन, इट इज द problem required the governments to downsize the budget and reduce the taxes to make more room for the capital markets. So subsidies for the poor, it became bad, while incentives for the investors, they were considered to be the good. Private sector की बात करें, with its focus on the bottom line, can be more economically efficient than the public sector. So अगर private sector और microscopically bottom line पे, मतलब BPL families पे, poor people पे, it would be focusing more. So economically things would be much more efficient, but again it is the private sector main motive is profit and not welfare. So that's why things are different. So private sector, it is not expected to subsidize the cost of the services. So obviously subsidies provide करना private sector का role नहीं है या private sector का काम नहीं है. Therefore जो economic reforms favoring the private sector, they have increased economic parasity even in the rich countries. So financial capitalization spread around the world with the globalization, the economies from 1980s, this we saw, with the finance flowing freely across the national borders, and जो elite class of global citizens थी and multinationals थे that emerged, who were comfortable everywhere, but they did not seem to belong anywhere. So this was one change. And then liberty, equality, fraternity, they are universal essentials of democracy, with justice for righting historical social wrongs. They are also objectives of India's constitution. So free market capitalism, it is founded in the principle of liberty in the economy, with the rights for everyone to use their properties as they will. GDP is a measure of progress. So again, this is a debatable topic. So size of GDP is a quantitative aggregate of all the economic activity, whether it improves or it harms the people in the planet. So GDP जो है, that is a quantitative measure. आपको quality वाला aspect है, जो welfare वाला aspect है, वो GDP cover नहीं करता है, क्योंकि it's just merely a number. So whether it improves or harms the people or planet became the overall measure of the progress in the 20th century. So 20th century economics founded on a model of an economy as a system of materials and energy in the general equilibrium. In this model, we saw that supply and demand, they are balanced by the prices set by an invisible hand. Basically, invisible hand is the market forces of demand and supply, जो price set करते हैं. So this was back then what was the belief of the people, and this was the premises also on which the economics functioned back then. So it presumes there are no powerful monopolies that set the rules of the game. So ऑब्वियसली इस मॉडल में कोई मोनोपोली नहीं है किसी एक पार्टी के हाथ में या किसी एक सेक्टर के हाथ में, इतनी ज्यादा कॉन्सेंट्रेशन ऑफ पावर नहीं है. सो इट इज बेसिकली बेस्ड ऑन merely demand and supply forces. So an economist mathematized model politics interferes with the good economics. So definitely there is political interference also जब हम practically चीजों की बात करते हैं. ऐसा नहीं है कि economics completely differently function कर रही है, politics completely different function कर रहे हैं. There is interlinkage between them. So its mathematics has no place for the human aspirations for the social equality and the politics forces fighting for the justice. So जब हम GDP की बात करते हैं, GDP is like it's merely a mathematical number. So basically अगर हम society की बात करें, society it wants equality, wants good life, good quality of life. So GDP का उससे कोई लेना देना नहीं है, and even political forces which are fighting for justice. So उसका भी कोई interlinkage नहीं है. So the model of economic growth that has guided the national and the international policies since 1990s की अगर हम बात करें, it will not create healthy democracies. So economics needs urgent reform to guide the progress towards universal social and ecological well-being. So that's why we need more reforms in economics, and all Indian political parties, they must concentrate on the economy for the sake of the people also, because it's all about people's welfare. And again, usme bhi interlinkage hai when we talk about the political interest also. So Indian economists too must rethink the paradigm of economics and concentrate on the requirement of the lower 50% of the pyramid, and not trust to wealth to trickle down on its own. So trickle down effect, we can't wait for it, or we can't be just, completely dependent upon that. We need to take measures. We need to focus upon the lower 50% of the pyramid. So that's there. And after Bamuk's Russia-Ukraine war की बात करें, they seem determined to continue their high-cost war. So the geography of this area is very important. आपको पता होना चाहिए कि पामुक area की क्या importance है, why it is like so important from the perspective of the what are the resources found. And war की बात करें तो we are not seeing कि it is going to end very soon. ऐसा कुछ हमें नहीं देखने को मिल रहा है. So why do judges they rescue themselves? आपने बहुत बार ऐसा न्यूज़ में पढ़ा होगा कि जज अपने आप को किसी पर्टिकुलर केस से रेस्क्यू कर लेते हैं. So that's what it is talking about. So what is meant by a recusal? Do mass recusals call into question judicial transparency or not? Then what rules does the Supreme Court formulate in the past on recusals? सारी चीजें मतलब क्या rules हैं related to it? How do other countries deal with recusals and the judicial bias? So let's understand this topic nicely. So here we see last week, former Supreme Court Judge Justice M.R. Shah refused to recuse himself from hearing a plea by the former IPS officer Sanjeev Bhatt to submit additional evidence to back his Gujarat High Court appeal against his conviction in the 1990 custodial death case. So that's why this is the news. And Mr. Bhatt contended that there was a reasonable apprehension of bias as Justice Shah, as a High Court judge, passed strictures against him while hearing his plea linked to the same FIR. So, पहले भी जो role था Mr. Shah का, he was related to this Gujarat case. That's why he was being asked to, rescue himself from this particular thing. But Justice Shah, he dismissed the plea as an attempt to indulge in bench hunting. So similarly, a few weeks ago, Chief Justice of India, he rejected an application seeking his recusal from hearing the petition seeking legal recognition of the same-sex marriages. So this was also observed. So basically recusals इसी के लिए होते हैं कि आप fair justice को promote कर सके, आप उसको maintain कर सके. So why do judges, they recuse themselves? So whenever there's a potential conflict of interest, so जब ऐसा कुछ देखा जाता है, conflict of interest, judge can withdraw from a case to prevent the perception कि judge it was biased while deciding a case. So this is the main objective behind recusals, कि आप जो फेयरनेस है, जो अनबायसनेस है किसी पर्टिकुलर केस में, एंड जस्टिस में ऑब्वियसली अनबायस्ड जस्टिस एंड फेयर जस्टिस की हम डिमांड करते हैं, तो उसको मेंटेन करने के लिए एंड उसको ना डिस्टर्ब करने के लिए, उसको वॉलेट ना करने के लिए जजेस दे हैव टू recuse themselves अगर ऐसा कोई केस होता है of conflict of interest. So this conflict of interest, it can arise in many ways, like from holding shares in a litigant company. अगर आप shares hold करते हो and the case is also related to that company, तो एक possibility होती है कि आप उस company के favor में judgment दो. So that can be one reason of conflict of interest. Another common reason is when an appeal is filed in the Supreme Court against a High Court judgment delivered by the concerned judge before his elevation. So एक ये case भी है. Then a practice stems from the cardinal principle of due process of law. So अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे the all about the recusals, so that is a part of the due process of law. So यहाँ पे आपको अब due process of law की बात की जा रही है, तो what is the difference between due process of law and the procedure established by law? Constitution किस चीज के बारे में बात कर रहा है, Constitution में क्या mentioned है जब हम procedure established by law की बात करते हैं, due process of law की बात करते हैं, कौन सी country से due process of law का concept लिया गया है. So all of these मतलब ये सारी basic चीजें जो पता होना important है. So like यहाँ पे it is saying कि it has been taken from the principle of the due process of law. So that is, no person shall be a judge in his own case. So another principle guiding the judicial recusals is justice must not only be done, but must also be seen to be done. So this was propounded in the 1924 in the Rex versus Sussex judges by the then Lord Chief Justice of England. So एक ये principle भी है जिसके under this practice it began, and by taking the oath of the office, judges, they promise to perform their duties without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So even in the oath of the judges also this part is there. Then talking about the third schedule of the Constitution में, third schedule talks about the oath. So furthermore, restatement of the values of the judicial life adopted by the Supreme Court forbids a judge from deciding a case involving any entity where he holds pecuniary interest unless the concerned parties clarify that they have no objections. So what is the procedure for recusals? Purpose तो हमने समझ लिया, principles क्या related है, schedule कौन सा related है, judgment कौन से related है. अब हमें ये देखना है कि अगर किसी जज को रिक्यूज करना होता है अपने आप को फ्रॉम अ पर्टिकुलर केस बिकॉज ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, तो उसका क्या पूरा प्रॉपर प्रोसीजर है. सो देयर आर टू काइंड ऑफ रिक्यूजल्स. एन ऑटोमेटिक रिक्यूजल होता है जहाँ पे जज हिमसेल्फ विड्रॉज फ्रॉम द केस, जहाँ पे जज खुद मतलब पता चल जाता है एंड यू अकॉर्डिंग टू योर ओन विल आप अपने आप को, जज अपने आप को उस केस में से रिक्यूज कर लेता है. दूसरा केस है जब पार्टी रेजेस अ प्ली फॉर रिक्यूजल हाईलाइटिंग कि देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ बायस एंड पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट ऑफ द जज इन द केस. एंड दूसरा केस ये जब पार्टी रेज करती है कोई ऐसी प्ली कि जो भी जज है उसकी वजह से there might be biasness. So these are two possible cases. So decision to recuse rests solely on the conscious and the discretion of the judge, and no party can compel a judge to withdraw from a case. So आप किसी को forcefully, किसी judge को forcefully compel नहीं कर सकते हो कि because they feel कि there is a possibility of biasness, तो आपको मतलब particular judge को recuse करना ही पड़ेगा. कंपेल नहीं कर सकते हो. दिस हैपेंस एज पर द डिस्क्रिशन एंड विलिंगनेस ऑफ द जज, एंड जज की कॉन्शियंस के ऊपर दिस इज बेस्ड. सो व्हाइल जजेस दे हैव recused themselves even if they do not see a conflict, but only because such apprehension was cast, there was also several instances where judges they have refused to withdraw from a case. So हमने दोनों तरीके के केसेस देखे हैं जहाँ पे जजेस ने मतलब मेयर अप्रीहेंशन के ऊपर ही अपने आप को रिक्यूज कर लिया, एंड ऐसे केसेस भी देखे हैं जहाँ जजेस ने मना कर दिया from recusing themselves from a particular case. So 2019 में while hearing a plea on the plight of the inmates in the Assam's detention centers, then CGI was asked to recuse himself from some adverse oral remarks. So Mr. Gogoi refused, saying कि जो plea है, it had enormous potential to damage the institution, that is judiciary. So if a judge recuses himself, the case is listed before the Chief Justice for allotment to an alternate bench. And India has no codified rules governing recusals, although several Supreme Court judgments they have dealt with the issue. So कोई एक proper codified rules नहीं है regarding the recusals, and अगर किसी जज को recuse करना होता है तो then that thing goes before the Chief Justice of India. And then obviously जो vacancy हो जाती है Constitution bench में, तो वो वहाँ पे obviously that is to be filled by the Chief Justice of India only. So do judges have to record a reason for recusal or not is the thing. So since there are no statutory rules, कोई ऐसे statutory rules नहीं है, कोई proper code नहीं है हमारे पास which is governing this recusal process, so it is often left to the judges themselves to record the reasons for recusals. So यहाँ पे भी judges की खुद की मर्जी है, अगर आप reason को record करना चाहते हो तो आप कर सकते हो, क्योंकि ऐसा कोई law नहीं है, particular law नहीं है, rules नहीं है जो ये बोल रहा है कि आपको reason record करना पड़ेगा. So कुछ judges orally बता देते हैं reason क्या है, and others they issue a written order recording the reasons. So in other cases reasons they are speculative also. So more often than not, the reasons behind a recusal they are not disclosed, leading to a diatribe against the judicial transparency, especially when the mass recusals occur in the sensitive cases. So basically, जो reason है they are not disclosed so as to maintain the judicial transparency. Specifically जब instances of mass recusals देखे जाते हैं. For instance, last year 5 judges of Bombay High Court they recused themselves from the Bhima Koregaon case. Similarly, recusal of the Supreme Court judge earlier this year from hearing the Bilkis Bano plea. It led to widespread speculation since no reasons were specified. So without specifying any reason, also you can recuse yourself. So basically, there is uncertainty and there is this discretion in the hands of the judges. So यहाँ पे different instances mention किए गए हैं. Then what rules has the Supreme Court formulated in the past? Like बहुत सारे ऐसे cases हुए हैं, तो क्या Supreme Court ने कुछ ऐसे rules formulate किए हैं कि नहीं? So Supreme Court it has over time outlined various factors to be taken into consideration for deciding the impartiality of a judge. So इससे regarding rules हैं. So this judgment of Ranjit Thakur versus Union of India 1987 Supreme Court held that to determine if a judge should recuse, what is relevant is the reasonableness of the apprehension of bias in the mind of the concerned party. So main चीज की यहाँ पे क्या बात की जा रही है? यहाँ पे reasonableness की बात की जा रही है कि क्या जज को अपने आप को recuse करना would be reasonable enough for that particular case, या जो भी apprehension case किए जा रहे, तो क्या it is reasonable or not. So proper approach for the judge is not to look at his own mind and ask himself, however honestly, खुद से ये पूछना कि am I biased or not, but to look at the mind of the party before him also. So Supreme Court in the state of West Bengal versus Shivananda Pathak 1998 defined judicial bias as a preconceived opinion or a predisposition or predetermination to decide a case or an issue in a particular manner, so much so that such predisposition does not leave the mind open to conviction. So this is basically एक definition दी है Supreme Court ने दी है. So you need to remember कि judicial bias की कोई भी जजमेंट या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बात नहीं करता है. दिस इज बीन गिवन बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट इटसेल्फ. सो यहाँ डिफरेंट जजमेंट्स की बात की गई है. एक ये जजमेंट है जिसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला कि वेयर जज हैज अ पेक्यूनियरी इंटरेस्ट, नो फर्दर इंक्वायरी इज नीडेड एज टू वेदर देयर वाज अ रियल डेंजर और रीजनेबल सस्पिशन ऑफ बायस और नॉट. And in this judgment, Supreme Court held that a judge who had rendered any decision in a smaller combination is not disqualified from being part of a larger bench to which a reference is made. So why do some of the recent recusal orders, what do they say? So like recent instances की हम बात करें, so February में additional sessions judge Arul Verma recused himself citing personal reasons less than a week after discharging Jawaharlal Nehru University student Sarjeel Imam and 10 others in 2009 in Jamia Millia Islamia violence case. So judge called the student activist arraigned in the case scapegoats and added that the police had trampled the rights of the accused. So ये पूरा instance है. And what about the foreign jurisdiction? So बाकी countries में क्या पूरा process है regarding the judicial recusals, या what do they follow so as to maintain the judicial unbiasedness या the fairness element? So contrasted with India, USA की बात करें, it has a well defined law on recusals. So India में कोई ऐसा particular law नहीं है. USA में there is a proper law on recusals. And definitely इसमें proper details they are mentioned, grounds mentioned हैं for disqualification of the judge, judges or magistrate judge. Such rules they're also codified in the American Bar Association Model Code of Judicial Conduct as well. And वहाँ पे 3 grounds हैं जो mention किए गए हैं for recusal: financial, corporate interest, or a case in which judge was a material witness or a lawyer in a relationship to a party. यूके की बात करें तो लॉ ऑन जुडिशियल रिक्यूजल्स इवॉल्व्ड थ्रू द जुडिशियल प्रोनाउंसमेंट्स. यूके में भी लॉ है बट दैट हैज इवॉल्व्ड विद डिफरेंट केसेस एज दे केम अप. So that's the all the important details जो हमने judges के recusal के बारे में बात करी. I hope you have understood all of them. And जो politically भी मतलब constitutionally भी चीजें, and then again Supreme Court के different judgments जो रही. सो सेंगोल की हमने कल बात करी थी. जो इम्पोर्टेंट डिटेल्स थी कि चोला वाले चोला किंगडम में इसको फॉलो किया जाता था कि जब भी कोई नया रूलर या नया किंग आता था तो the Sengol was given to that person. So historical Sengol that will be installed in the new parliament building. This is the picture, and यहाँ पे Nandi Bull is the capital of it, which justifies, which is depicting justice. So according to Center, food grains, oilseed and food grains and all जो oilseed का harvest रहने वाला है, this would be breaking records. So minister says कि sugarcane production, it is also likely to hit the record levels. Estimates they reached from the crop feedback provided by the state. So this is as per the estimates that the center is saying कि even food grains and oilseeds, they are going to make record. Basically, they are going to break earlier records. So center, it is estimating a record production of paddy, wheat, maize, soybean, rapeseed, mustard, and sugarcane according to the third advance estimates. So when we have the exact figures, we'll be having a look at this thing. So 2 more cheetah cubs, they die at the Kuno Park and one is unwell. So even 2 cheetahs, they have also died. So we are not seeing it. हम अभी तक तो नहीं बोल सकते कि it has been a successful measure of reviving back the cheetah population in India. So we're not getting any positive signals so far. So because of kidney ailment or cardiopulmonary failure, injury from the violent interaction, weakness and extreme weather की वजह से, these are the reasons for the death so far. So एक नई कमेटी बनाई गई है to keep a watch on the cheetah project, and international national experts, they are part of the panel formed in the wake of the Kuno cub deaths. So इससे regarding एक कमेटी भी बनाई गई है. उसके अलावा moving forward, so amid reports of the shortage, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India to hold surveillance on the milk and the milk products. So milk prices में we are seeing कि they are shooting up this year, this time because of again production कम हुआ and then lumpy skin disease की वजह से भी the production was impacted. So that's why the supply of milk is less compared to the demand. So that's why the milk prices even they are increasing. On the world page, so Iran says that it has successfully tested the long-range ballistic missile. So Iran has successfully tested a 2,000-kilometer range ballistic missile, and it is one of the biggest missile programs in West Asia. So despite the opposition, Iran is saying that it will further develop its defensive missile program. So Wagner says that it is handing the Bamuk to Russian army. So even Bamuk comes under the Russian control. So जैसे कि मैंने पहले बोला कि you need to find out about the importance of this region and its significance. So USA warns that Chinese hackers, they are attacking the infrastructure. So Microsoft says the attack targeting the Guam and elsewhere was carried out by a China-sponsored actor dubbed Walt Typhoon. Beijing calls the acquisition a collective disinformation campaign. So digital infrastructure is under attack. On the business page, government is trying to link the tax collected at source on the overseas spends to the local TDS. So जो credit card spending से related changes किए गए हैं, 20% tax impose किया जाएगा, 7 lakh rupees अगर आप send करें on a foreign trip using your credit or debit cards, तो उस पे कोई tax नहीं है. And Chief Economic Advisor says कि move is aimed to help smoothen the cash flows, and he explains कि जो 20% tax collect किया जाएगा on the international card spends, it is meant as deterrent targeting the people who are evading the taxes. So tax evasion को prevent करने के लिए ये step लिया गया है. Taking up the Mint newspaper now, so यहाँ पे energy security is critical to sustain India's growth. Again, coming from the chief economic advisor, so continued funding for the fossil fuels will ensure growth and counter the external headwinds. So energy security is very important. And जब हम green energy transition की भी बात करते हैं, वहाँ पे भी कि we are like ensuring that we are transitioning towards clean energy sources, but at the same time maintaining energy security would be very, very important. So only then we can call the transition to be successful. So he says he continued funding for the fossil fuels. That is very important. And that is also very important to counter the external challenges that they are there. So energy security, including the use of fossil fuels, it will be the single most crucial factor in sustaining India's growth rate. So he said, amid mounting worries of the geopolitical instability and the impact of the climate change, energy security becomes very, very important. So even after the Ukraine war started, again, we saw that crude oil prices, they spiked, and then वहाँ पे भी energy security वाला angle आ जाता है. So record food grain output likely, as per the government, this we have seen. So India may join the offshore wind pact, first tender in 2 months. So India is very actively considering joining the Global Offshore Wind Alliance in an attempt to improve its energy transition standing, as per the Deputy Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, which played a key role in forming this alliance. So organization, it has invited India to join it, which would help New Delhi in terms of the technology and knowledge transfer. So these are going to be two main benefits out of this if India joins this. So far 14 countries jo hain, they have joined this alliance. So this is the Global Offshore Wind Alliance, and International Renewable Energy Agency is an important player in its establishment. So you can find out more about it. So India plans to set up the offshore wind projects in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. So we will see coordination of ARENA and India in this space or not. So that's the question. So if we join it, so that would be helpful. And how do you see the flow of climate finance to developing countries? So this is a view on this particular question. So seed stocks to be beefed up as part of the El Nino contingency preparation. So since we are having forecast this year, we'll be seeing El Nino. So for that, so as to, be fully prepared for that. So we are maintaining कि जो हमारे पास seed stocks हैं, they remain adequate. So government is increasing the kharif seed reserves to 4% of the total seeds in the country, which is up from the usual 1% level normally we used to maintain. But this is a part of the contingency plan for the drought-like situations amid the El Nino predictions. So each year government sets the target for the states to keep the seeds of various crops under the National Seed Reserve Scheme in the event of drought या other कोई ऐसा exceptional weather event होता है. So stocks in the reserve, they are not distributed until 15th of August. So आप थोड़ा और find out करोगे about the National Seed Reserve Scheme. Coming to Financial Express, so government questions the angel tax blow. So investors from 21 nations, they are exempted. So there's no waiver for the Mauritius, Singapore, and UAE. So taxing times talk about the angel tax. Simple definition, malab angel tax is imposed on that particular amount of money which is raised by the registered or unlisted startups, basically, जो उनका शेयर की वैल्यू है इफ दे आर रेजिंग द मनी अबव द फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ द शेयर्स, तो उस पर्टिकुलर अमाउंट के ऊपर ही एंजल टैक्स को इम्पोज किया जाता है. सो लैक ऑफ एंटिटीज फ्रॉम टैक्स हेवंस on the exemption list means the government is serious about plugging the loopholes. Then there is no exemption to the entities from countries like Mauritius, Singapore, and UAE. So this means जो tax है, it could indeed have an impact on the fund raised by the Indian unlisted funds. So these loopholes, they allow the non-genuine investors to misuse the liberal FDI policies, which is followed by India. So जो loopholes है, उसको plug करने की बात की जा रही है, and tax experts, they are curious if जो broad-based funds हैं or funds with more than 50 investors, they will include the pooling vehicles making investment in India through the specific special purpose vehicles located in the low tax jurisdiction. So इसके लिए they feel कि condition of 50 investors, it is not in sync with Section 9A, which provides safe harbor benefits for funds with 25 investors. So 21 white label countries identify की गई है, of which specified entities would not be subject to the angel tax in India. So that's why they are being called as white label countries. So यहाँ पे you can see the example. These are part of this white label list. So Chief Economic Advisor says that private investment, it is unfolding at steady pace. So it is gradually increasing, we can say that. So he says that the energy mix hai, it needs both the fossil and the non-fossil fuels, because energy security is very important in order to sustain our economic growth. So he says that private investment, it is not just something that we are waiting for. It is unfolding, but unfolding at a steady pace, which is good enough for us. So we can say कि इतना ज्यादा कोई प्रॉब्लम एरिया नहीं है अभी के लिए, क्योंकि हम देख रहे हैं कि gradually and slowly private investment, it is increasing. So apart from this, if there is a single most important worry in the mind for sustaining the growth rate that we have been able to achieve in the last 2 to 3 years, so main challenge या main concern अभी के लिए हमारे लिए energy security है. So these are his viewpoints on the investment thing. So ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन की बहुत ज्यादा बात की जा रही है. ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन को प्रोड्यूस कैसे किया जाता है और क्या डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ हाइड्रोजन होते हैं, that becomes important. So unfair subsidies in the developed world exist. So advanced economies, they are creating barriers in green hydrogen by providing liberal subsidies, and subsidies, they are even equal to the cost of production also. So पूरा cost of production के amount की आपको subsidy provide की जा रही है in the developed countries to prevent India from exporting the benign fuel to them. So this is obviously not acceptable and sees efforts to prevent India from exporting this benign fuel. So ताकि इंडिया ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन एक्सपोर्ट ना कर सके, तो इसलिए डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज डोमेस्टिकली हैवी सब्सिडीज प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं. So advanced economies which have been vocal about the benefits of the free market, they are creating huge barriers without any hesitation. So services exports likely to overtake merchandise phase by the financial year 28. So trend over the past decade, if we try to understand of the services exports and the merchandise exports. So here, services exports, it's in blue color. So you can see since financial year 2015, it has been increasing, and up till 2020, it has increased consistently. But उसके बाद से only in this financial year of 21 it saw a decline, and उसके बाद से you can see how sharply these services exports they have increased. So services exports, services sector is very important for the economic growth for India. Merchandise exports में अगर हम देखें, यहाँ से इट इज इंक्रीज, फिर फॉल आया 2 साल, उसके बाद अगेन रिकॉर्ड लेवल्स हमने देखे. तो परसेंटेज शेयर ऑफ द सर्विसेज एंड एक्सपोर्ट्स की बात करें तो परसेंटेज शेयर भी इंक्रीज होता हुआ हमें दिखाई दिया. एक ग्रेजुअल डिप आया, देन अगेन परसेंटेज इट हैज इंक्रीज्ड टू 42%. सो टोटल एक्सपोर्ट्स में सर्विसेज जो एक्सपोर्ट्स है उसका शेयर इज 42%, एंड फाइनेंशियल 2015 में इट वाज 34%. सो अगेन यहाँ पे भी हम ये नहीं बोल सकते हैं कि ग्रेजुअली इंक्रीज हुआ, क्योंकि एक साल में बीच में फॉल भी हुआ है 2022 में. So food grain production hits record 331 million ton in 2022-23. So total production, you can see 2018-19 se we have the figure. So 285.2 million ton say it has increased over every year, and it was recorded at 330.5 million ton in the previous year. So this also includes pulses and coarse cereals as well, and the figure is as per the third advanced estimates of the food grain production. Finally, we'll take up the Indian Express newspaper. So night landing milestone. So in this picture, you can see a MiG-29K fighter jet makes a night landing on INS Vikrant in what the Navy called a historic milestone indicative of its impetus towards Atmanirbharta. So officials, they said the night landing test, it was held on Wednesday night, and we have successfully completed that. So that's why we have made a milestone. So if we go by the health index, जो नीति आयोग के द्वारा publish किया जाता है, so नीति आयोग report was to be out by December 2022, but it was not made public yet. So Kerala, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, they topped the states in the COVID year, and Delhi was the worst Indian territory in this health index. So you can see like जो political element है obviously हम उसको नहीं देख रहे, but यहाँ पे key schemes of the Modi government, सारी schemes, important schemes and किस area पे वो focus कर रहे हैं, so all of that has been mentioned, so you can just quickly go through it. And yeah, that's like, this is the important portion in this advertisement. So second G20 anti-corruption working group meeting begins in Rishikesh. So जहाँ पे भी different locations पे meeting हो रही है, उनका architecture या और जो important चीजें हैं, given कि कौन सी location है, कोई मतलब कोई important river वहाँ से flow करती है, related to wildlife, कुछ important चीजें जो हमें पता होना important है. So वो सारी चीजें आप time to time देखते रहोगे तो that becomes very important. And so double threat at the border. So high-tech military is the key to protect the country like India. So a technologically advanced military is crucial to protect the national interest, more so for a country like India, which faces a double threat on the borders and has one of the largest armed forces in the world. So he said that it's important that DRDO, which is country's premier defense and R&D agency also, academia work in the partnership to find the solutions to the challenges which are faced by India. So it was for the very first time कि 25% of जो इंडिया का बजट है, डिफेंस बजट है, R&D के लिए अलॉट किया गया है. So unless we do the research, we'll not be able to adopt the new technologies. So यहाँ पे inflation की बात की जा रही है. So as growth inflation moderate further, growth and inflation both are moderating. So space could open up for easing the financial conditions towards end of this year. So basically, right now we have been following the tight monetary policy. So it is basically signaling towards that. We might, since situation is getting under control, so it's not important to continue with the tight monetary policy now because उसकी वजह से ग्रोथ के ऊपर भी इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है. सो जो लेटेस्ट एमपीसी मीटिंग होने वाली है हमारे लिए, जो आउटकम होगा, जो रीजंस दिए जाएंगे, दे वुड बी इम्पोर्टेंट. इन्फ्लेशन के लिए आगे वाले चैलेंजेस की हम बात करें तो एल नीनो की वजह से देयर वुड बी वन चैलेंज, एंड जो ग्लोबल यूक्रेन वॉर वगैरह चल रहा है दैट ऑल्सो बिकम्स इम्पोर्टेंट. सो मेन फोकस हमारे लिए एल नीनो ही है क्योंकि उसकी वजह से जो फूड इन्फ्लेशन है अगेन दैट कैन राइज. So India is under pressure to alter the definition of employment to an international benchmark. Its statistical system is at such a low ebb that it does not seem able to resist the counterproductive recommendations. So यहाँ पे basically इंडिया की जो employment की definition है उसके बारे में सारी बात की जा रही है. We are under like pressure also. So India has one strong statistical system. It has suffered a severe reputational loss in recent years brought about by the Mosby's disavowal of its own poverty data and failure to invest in its analytical capacity. So जो हमारा statistical system का पूरा framework है, that needs reform, that needs an overall. So unless statistical system को हम properly develop करते हैं, self-confidence to assertively engage with the international organization, it is willing to adopt the global best practices where it makes sense and resist the pressure to do so when it does not serve the policy needs. So जहाँ पे आपको लगता है it makes sense to make the changes, तो वहाँ पे changes किए जाने चाहिए. जहाँ पे अगर आपको pressure के अंडर लाया जा रहा है and you see कि उसका कोई ऐसा as per the policy कोई जरूरत नहीं है, तो वहाँ पे आपको resist भी करना important है. So it will continue to be held in low esteem nationally and internationally जब तक कि हम again we are not focusing upon reforming and doing the necessary and the required changes in our statistical system. So Iran की जो ballistic missile के test है that we have seen, and Russian soldiers replace the Wagner on the outskirts of the Bakhmut. This also we have talked about. Germany is the world's fourth largest economy, slides into recession. So again, global challenges की जो हम बात कर रहे हैं, you can see the impact and problem for power. So figures, they are a blow to the government, which last month doubled its growth forecast for this year after a feared winter energy crunch failed. So it said the economy would grow by 0.4%, and the forecast that may need to be revised now downward because we are seeing the economy of Germany sliding into recession. So German economy shrank unexpectedly in the first 3 months of this year, marking the second quarter of the contraction. That is one definition of recession. कि सेकेंड क्वार्टर में भी कॉन्ट्रैक्शन रिकॉर्ड की गई है. तो जब हम रिसेशन की बात करते हैं तो दिस इज अ पार्ट ऑफ अ डेफिनेशन ऑल्सो. दैट्स हाउ यू डिफाइन रिसेशन. अगर आपको प्रॉपरली आपके माइंड में क्वेश्चन आएगा कि रिसेशन जनरल सेंस में वी नो व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय इट, बट कब हम बोलते हैं कि वन कंट्री इट हैज एंटर्ड इनटू रिसेशन या इट इज हेडेड टुवर्ड्स दैट. So that is when जब हम बोलते हैं first 2 quarters में we have recorded contraction of growth. So that's a part of the definition. And data that was released by the Federal Statistical Office shows Germany की जो GDP है, it is declined by 0.3% in period from January to March, and this follows a drop of 0.5% जो record की गई in the world's fourth biggest economy during the last quarter of 2022. So पिछले 2 consecutively quarters में decline record की गई है. So this is a common definition of recession, though economics, like जो economist है on the Euro area business cycle dating committee, they use the broader data set including the employment figures. So employment figures भी count किए जाते हैं. मतलब simply इस figure के ऊपर तो हम completely rely नहीं कर सकते कि just because 2 quarter में growth कम हुई है तो इसलिए the country is heading into recession, और बाकी factors को भी analyze किया जाता है. So जर्मनी में बेसिकली यूरो यूज किया जाता है. सो एम्प्लॉयमेंट द कंट्री रोज इन द फर्स्ट क्वार्टर एंड इन्फ्लेशन भी कम हुई है, बट जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है दे आर हायर, सो इट विल बी कीप पेइंग ऑन द स्पेंडिंग एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट आल्सो. सो इकोनॉमिस्ट ने बोला कि जो हाई इन्फ्लेशन है दैट हिट द कंज्यूमर स्पेंडिंग विद द प्राइसेस इन द अप्रैल. सो ये कुछ फैक्टर्स हैं एंड इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट टू मेंटेन एन आई कि जर्मन इकोनॉमी में क्या चल रहा है. So US and South Korea troops, they hold live fire drills near the North Korea border. So यहाँ पे भी कुछ ना कुछ चलता ही रहता है and definitely नॉर्थ कोरिया नहीं चाहता है. नॉर्थ कोरिया को अपनी हेजेमनी मेंटेन करनी है. एंड देन अगेन ताइवान वाले एरिया में भी चाइना को प्रॉब्लम होती है जब यूएस अपना रोल अपनी प्रेजेंस इंक्रीज करता है. एंजल टैक्स की हम बात कर चुके हैं. आफ्टर 3 years by RBI, it has become a net seller of the US dollars in the financial year 2023. So 3 साल के बाद we are seeing कि RBI it turned out to be the net seller of US dollar. So RBI की जो forex इंटरवेंशन करनी पड़ती है मार्केट में. अगर रुपी बहुत ज्यादा डेप्रिशिएट करता है तो ऑब्वियसली आरबीआई इंटरवीन्स इन द मार्केट थ्रू सेलिंग द यूएस डॉलर्स. सो अगर नेट परचेजर रहा है आरबीआई तो प्लस का साइन मिलेगा, एंड नेट सेलर है तो माइनस. सो फाइनेंशियल ईयर 19 से हम देखेंगे 2019 से, तो उसमें भी वी वर नेट सेलर, बट जो नेक्स्ट कॉन्जिक्यूटिवली 3 years रहे उसमें वी वर नेट बायर्स ऑफ यूएस डॉलर. सो दिस ईयर जो लास्ट अभी फाइनेंशियल ईयर खत्म हुआ है वहां पे आरबीआई वाज अ नेट सेलर अगेन, क्योंकि जो रुपी में वॉलेटिलिटी देखी गई, रुपी जो डेप्रिशिएट हुआ उसको और कम करने के लिए, उसको रोकने के लिए RBI had to intervene, and that's why it is the net seller of US dollar. So why did RBI become a net seller of US dollar? Again, यहाँ पे यही question है. So RBI का जो decision था to sell the greenback, it was to prop up the rupee. Again, reason यही रहता है कि rupee depreciate हो रहा था. It is depreciated by almost rupees 6 to 8% to 82 levels against the dollars as of 31st March 2023. And 2022 1st of April को $1 was rupees 76, and then it depreciated तो almost 82 के लेवल पे 83 का लेवल भी क्रॉस कर दिया था. So depreciation को रोकने के लिए RBI यूएस डॉलर का सप्लाई मार्केट पे इंक्रीज कर देता है. तो ड्यूरिंग द प्रीवियस फिस्कल हायर इंपोर्ट बिल्स ड्यू टू अ सर्ज इन द ऑयल प्राइसेस आफ्टर द यूक्रेन वॉर, इट हैड पुट प्रेशर ऑन द डोमेस्टिक करेंसी. So main reason यही रहा. And last year the rupee was depreciating primarily on widening of the current account, as जो oil prices थे they increased due to the Ukraine war and strengthening the dollar against other currencies. So because जो हमारा import bill था वो increase हो गया क्योंकि crude oil के prices increase हो गए because of the Russia Ukraine war, तो उसकी वजह से rupee started depreciating. and dollar started strengthening. So rupee, it also declined as foreign investors, they also pulled out of the money from the domestic market after US Fed raised the interest rates to check the inflation. So this was second reason why rupee was depreciating, because जो foreign investors हैं, जो FPI investors हैं, Indian capital market, Indian share market में invest करते हैं. So since US Fed ने interest rate increase करना start कर दिया under the tight monetary policy to contain the inflation, so they started withdrawing from the Indian economy, क्योंकि अब उनको यूएसए की इकोनॉमी में अगर हाई इंटरेस्ट रेट मिल रहा है तो उनके लिए वो एक सेफर ऑप्शन है. So that's why they started exiting the Indian market, and again that led to depreciation of rupee. So how much did RBI sell? So on a gross basis, RBI sold around $212.57 billion in the spot market, and at the same time it also purchased $187 billion. So how much income did the RBI generate from the sale of dollars? So RBI booked a huge profit by selling the dollars as it bought at the lower levels and sold it at the higher levels. The simple mechanism, simple fund है. And जो dividend payout में भी हमने देखा that increased by 3 times. So जो dividend RBI central government को देता है, so that was also higher. So last week, RBI approved a transfer of 87,000 crore rupees as surplus to the union government. So इसमें भी 188% का jump हमें देखने को मिला. So did RBI sell dollars in the forward market? No, forward market में the outstanding net forward purchase of RBI stood at $23 billion at the end of March. So forward market में नहीं, RBI ने spot market में sell किया था. So आपको मतलब difference पता होना चाहिए forward and spot market में क्या difference होता है. So जो yield है 10-year government security पे that is falling, and what should the retail investors do now? तो जो 10-year government security है, obviously that is long term security. Generally जो मतलब कंसेप्ट होता है नॉर्मली अंडर नॉर्मल सिचुएशन, जो लॉन्ग ईयर गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज होती है लॉन्ग टर्म की होती है, जो मतलब बहुत लंबे टाइम पीरियड को लेती है, उस पर जो यील्ड रहती है वो हायर रहती है कंपेयर टू द शॉर्ट टर्म यील्ड. शॉर्ट टर्म बेसिकली 1 साल के लिए जो गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी रहती है, ट्रेजरी बिल्स रहते हैं, उस पर यील्ड कम होनी चाहिए, एंड जो लॉन्ग टर्म सिक्योरिटी है उस पर यील्ड ज्यादा होनी चाहिए. बट यहाँ पे हमें क्या देखने को मिल रहा है, जो 10-year गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी है उस पर यील्ड फॉल हो रही है. तो रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स को भी ऐसे सिनेरियो में क्या करना चाहिए. एंड यहाँ पे जो इन्वर्टेड कर्व की बात की जाती है, यील्ड कर्व की, वो टॉपिक भी इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाता है. सो यील्ड ऑन द बेंचमार्क 10-year गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी, इट हैज फॉलन टू 6.9% फ्रॉम 7.54% in early March. Even yields on the shorter tenor papers, including 5-year government bonds, that have also eased to below 7%. So दोनों पे बेसिकली यील्ड तो दोनों शॉर्ट टर्म एंड लॉन्ग टर्म दोनों की फॉल हो रही है, बट जो लेवल है अगर हम उसको कंपेयर करें तो वो शॉर्ट टर्म पे ज्यादा देखा जा सकता है, ये हम बोल सकते हैं. सो आरबीआई इन द नवंबर 2021 इट अलाउड द रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स टू पार्टिसिपेट इन द गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज मार्केट बोथ प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी में. रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स को अलाउ कर दिया गया कि आप लोग भी पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हो, बट हमें ऐसा कोई मतलब इंथुजियाज्म नहीं देखने को मिला है ऑन द पार्ट ऑफ द रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स की उन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ चढ़ के ट्रेड किया हो या फिर बाय करी हो सिक्योरिटीज. सो शुड द रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स कंसिडर इन्वेस्टिंग द गवर्नमेंट बैक्ड सिक्योरिटीज और नॉट. So why are retail investors they are shying away, and वो क्यों नहीं इन्वेस्ट कर रहे या ट्रेड कर रहे इन द गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज. सो जैसा कि हमने देखा कि नवंबर 2021 में प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने लॉन्च किया आरबीआई रिटेल डायरेक्ट. This was a one-stop solution to facilitate investment in the government securities by the individual investors. So total number of registrations in the retail direct scheme since its inception, it stands at 99,000 only. So accounts that were open so far were 84,000. So on average, your retail subscriptions stay in the government security auctions. They held over the past few months, they have been around rupees 42 crores. So though the RBI has developed a platform which is a layman find it's complicated to invest in the government bonds. So आम आदमी के लिए इन्वेस्ट करना थोड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, मतलब इतना इजी नहीं है इस चीजों को समझना, एंड ऑब्वियसली आम आदमी के लिए तो स्पेशली. तो दे नीड सम गाइडेंस, कुछ गाइडेंस चाहिए उनको, मे बी थ्रू इंटरमीडियरीज प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं फॉर इन्वेस्टिंग इन द गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स. सो थोड़ी और अगर हम अवेयरनेस पे काम करेंगे तो दे माइट इन्वेस्ट इन द गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड्स. So government securities markets, they lack liquidity. So bankers का ये मानना है कि जो government security markets है वहाँ पे liquidity की बात करें compared to the direct equity market में जो trading होती है, investment होती है, तो वहाँ पे government security market में liquidity कम है. सो वहाँ पे ट्रेडिंग और इन्वेस्टमेंट करना थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा. इन्वेस्ट तो आप कर सकते हो अगर आप देन अवेयर हो, बट ट्रेडिंग करना थोड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट, थोड़ा मुश्किल हो जाएगा गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी मार्केट में. तो यील्ड्स फॉल क्यों कर रही है? यील्ड ऑन 10-year गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी वाज स्टैंडिंग एट 7.4% in March, fell to 7.3 out of the government on 24 March announced changes in the taxation of the debt mutual funds. So benefit of indexation in the calculation, the long-term capital gains of the debt mutual funds was removed. So जो indexation का benefit था वो remove कर दिया गया. 10-year government security it is to 7.2. RBI surprise moved to keep the repo rate unchanged. So currently जो 10-year government security yield is trading at almost 7% हम बोल सकते हैं. So 5-year government security पे भी yield fall हुई है from 7.4 to 7%, and 1-year government bonds पे this is also fallen from 7.23 to almost 6.8%. So जो inflation में भी fall हमें देखने को मिल रहा है, that has also pushed the yield downwards. So situation और थोड़ी comfortable होती हुई दिखाई दे रही है, तो इसलिए also yield is falling. So yields they have eased as there is exception, as there is expectation कि RBI may go for longer pause after April inflation fell to 4.7%. So yield आने वाले टाइम में और भी फॉल हो सकती है. So is it the best time to go for the government securities or not? So experts का मानना ये है कि yield since it is falling, it is a good position. It's a good proposition for the retail investors if they want to wait till maturity. So obviously investors को yield ज़्यादा चाहिए, so which was very attractive जब it was around 7.5%. For investment that was a good time period. But now you are getting at 7%, so which is still a good rate for the retail investors. But again, अगर आपको पहले 7.5% मिल रही थी तो वो ज़्यादा बेस्ट था. So long term securities में इन्वेस्ट करना ज़्यादा सेफ रहता है जिनकी मेच्योरिटी अराउंड 20 to 30 years रहती है. And investors इन्वेस्ट भी कर सकते हैं in the state development loans through mutual fund schemes. So बाकी क्या investment options आपके पास? So broad advice right now is to look into, to lock into these government security rates since they are not likely to climb too much here on. So यहाँ से इतना ज़्यादा increase भी नहीं होंगे अगर आप इस weight में बैठे हो कि क्या पता आने वाले time में yields increase हो जाए, तो इतना ज़्यादा कोई difference नहीं देखने को मिलेगा. So one can also look at the fixed deposits also. आप fixed FDs में भी deposit कर सकते हो. And SBI जो largest lender है इंडिया का, it has been offering an interest rate of around 7% for the deposits less than rupees 2 crores, maturing between 1 year to less than 3 years. तो यहाँ पे तो time period भी इतना ज़्यादा नहीं है and आपको interest rates भी 7% मिल रहा है, तो यहाँ पे भी आप invest कर सकते हो on your deposits which would be less than rupees 2 crores. And private sector banks की बात करें तो HDFC Bank it has been offering interest rate of in the range of 6.6 to 7.1% on deposits maturing between 1 year and up to 18 months. So senior citizens के लिए 50 basis points का और benefit मिलेगा उनको interest rate में. So if you are going for FD, pretty much every bank it is आपको जो FD में interest rate मिल रहा है around 7.5% रहेगा. So these are the other options if you are considering for investment. So India and South Pacific की बात करें, so क्या important takeaways रहे for the Prime Minister's visit during in this region where China is a powerful actor, establishing a reassuring presence not predicated on the checkbook diplomacy and amplification of the voice of the global South. So ये important focus areas हैं. And Fiji, PNG in India. So beginning 1879, Indian indentured laborers was transported to Fiji to work on the sugarcane plantations. So around 60,000 Indians, they were brought to the islands between 1879 to 1916 from the early 20th century. And they started working the sugar plantations in Fiji. So workers' agitations and the efforts of the C.F. Andrews, a friend of Mahatma Gandhi, who visited Fiji in 1915, led to the abolishing of indenture system in 1920. So 1948 से until Fiji's independence in 1970, India had a commissioner to look after the interests of the people of Indian origin there. So इंडिया और फिजी के बीच में जो हिस्टोरिकल रिलेशनशिप, हाउ थिंग्स हैव चेंज, वो सारी बात की गई है. इंडिया एंड दी पैसिफिक आइलैंड कंट्रीज की बात करें तो इंडियन ऑफिशियल से कि जो एग्रीमेंट है विद द 14 पैसिफिक आइलैंड कंट्रीज इज पार्ट ऑफ इंडियाज एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी. So major part of the engagement here, it is through the development assistance under the South-South cooperation in terms of the capacity building and initiative, and the activist policy for the Pacific Island countries is the FIPIC. FIPIC के हमने कल भी बात करी थी, Forum for India Pacific Island Cooperation. So second FIPIC summit जो होने वाला है, it was held in Jaipur in 2015. Again, जो 14 FIPIC countries हैं, they are taking part in it. And so definitely जो island countries है, climate change उनके लिए biggest threat और challenge है. So initiatives like International Solar Alliance जो इंडिया ने स्टार्ट की, then Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure इसमें भी इंडिया का important role रहा. They complement the relationship with the Pacific Island countries. So along with Australia, UK and small island developing states, India ने launch किया Infrastructure for Resilient Island States on the sidelines of COP26 at Glasgow in 2021. So बाकी सारे initiatives है. China is also important in this region. So China की जैसे भी बहुत सारी चीजें और complex हो जाती हैं. So petaflop supercomputer कल हमने बात करी थी. India, it is said to unveil high performance computers for weather forecasting institutes later this year. So कल हमने प्रत्युष कंप्यूटर की पिक्चर भी देखी थी, सुपर कंप्यूटर की. नेशनल सुपर कंप्यूटिंग मिशन भी है. व्हाट आर फ्लॉप्स इन कंप्यूटिंग? सो फ्लॉप स्टैंड्स फॉर फ्लोटिंग पॉइंट ऑपरेशंस पर सेकंड. दे आर कॉमनली यूज्ड मेट्रिक टू मेजर द कंप्यूटेशनल परफॉर्मेंस, लाइक प्रोसेसिंग पावर को एस्टिमेट करने के लिए, एंड एफिशिएंसी. So this is the unit used. What is a petaflop? So कल हमने ये सारा कवर किया था. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us in the today's analysis, and do like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us.